There's a phrase that I heard from a woman from Maine just recently when I was on the deacon retreat just a couple of months ago. And that phrase was, "The penny drops." I've never heard that phrase before. She told me that it goes back to the olden days when coins were used in machines like public scales. You guys remember that, right? That would cost a penny, and then after you inserted the coin, there's this moment in time where the penny drops until it lands and the scale delivers the person's weight. So I think that phrase refers to that moment in time. So let's back up into the Advent season and today's gospel just to see how the penny drops. This, as Father mentioned, is the first day of the new liturgical year. Happy New Year, everybody. But today's reading doesn't start this year with chapter 1, verse 1 of St. Mark. Instead, the passage that we heard today from the gospel is closer to the end of the gospel. Here's the context of today's gospel passage. Jesus has already entered Jerusalem, where he brings his public ministry to a close. He's already closed the temple and entered into a debate with the traditional leaders of the faith. And then, from the Mount of Olives, Jesus predicts Jerusalem's destruction and the end of the world. Today's gospel selection ends Jesus' teaching to his disciples. Under obedience and the gift of himself on the cross, Jesus is about to leave his disciples. In the parable, he associates his departure with the man traveling abroad. The master may be leaving, but his return is quite certain, even though those given the charge of the household do not know when. What is for sure is that when the master returns, he expects to find that house in good order and his servants alert. They are all charged to stay constantly awake. Well, Advent has begun, and we need this reminder that Jesus will return. For who among us hasn't at some time dozed off in our service to the Lord? It is this parable that shakes us awake to full discipleship readiness. That penny is dropping. At first blush, Mark sounds like he's speaking about some future event. But I tell you, he is not so much concerned about the future as he is to instill and reinforce in his community a Christian attitude of the present. Mark gives us a parable which Jesus told to help his hearers prepare for his return, but also so that they would respond to his message then and there. Look, if this parable just wanted to warn Christians to be watchful for the future, then the emphasis would have been on the gatekeeper who's going to admit the master on his return. So then we ask, what's the purpose of all those other servants and their assignments? Are they just merely extras in the background of this story? Mark seems to be thinking of his wider community, all of the servants of the church. Everybody has their own tasks. They all must be encouraged to be vigilant. Watch, he tells us. Today may be the beginning of Advent, but Jesus' passion is very closely linked to this season, in which we keep vigil, mindful of what the coming Christ asks of all of his disciples. watchfulness, and faithful service in his name. Advent begins with a wake-up call, inviting and challenging us to ask, how watchful have I been for the Lord in my daily life? We know we are waiting for the Lord's future coming, but in the meantime, how alert have we been to his presence here and now, daily in our lives? Our faith in Jesus' presence already among us draws us around this altar today to listen to his word and to receive his body and blood, which is going to help us stay vigilant and wake us even if we have been dozing off. We are reminded that the penny will drop and land. This is all about active waiting. It's like when you clean your house, waiting for guests to come. That's very different from passive waiting, which just lets you sit around and pass time without the focus and the watchfulness that this parable asks of us. Jesus calls us to have a sense of responsibility. If we are trying to be ready all the time, then we will meet Christ when he arrives every single day. That is because the present moment is so charged with possibilities. Time in the Bible can be described the way we usually refer to it. We look at our watch and we say, it's 11:15. That's Chronos time. It marks the seconds and the minutes and the hours. But in Scripture, we also have what is known as Kairos time. That's a special time that is charged with possibility. A moment when the unexpected happens and breaks in on our routine, offering a wonderful opportunity for us. It's like when we say, you remember the time that we went shopping for a gift for somebody that we pulled off of the giving tree? That's Kairos time. Today's parable speaks in Kairos time and should cause us to reflect, am I just marking time, keeping busy waiting for some future far-off event? Or do I sense that the present is charged with possibility? And so I keep my eyes open to respond to all those possibilities when they occur. During this in-between time, am I finding ways to stay alert and conscious so that I can detect Jesus' presence when he comes daily into my life? Perhaps we can devote some of the time in this Advent season for, let's say, reflective reading, or meditation, or attending some lectures at church or elsewhere, finding housing and clothing for the homeless, tutoring kids, all other moments that are filled with great possibilities of Kairos time. We will be awake and ready when that penny drops.